Hello, unstoppable real estate investors. I'm Rayanna Starr, and I'm your hostess for the Unstoppable Real Estate Investor podcast, learning from the top 5%. And with me is our guest today, Anson Young. And Anson Young, is a member of our community, the Unstoppable Real Estate Investor Facebook group. And I was asking him why he took us up on the invitation for being a podcast guest, and he just simply became a member of our community, and he started getting my emails. So email marketing works. In fact, of all the marketing I've done, it's email marketing that actually gets me business, because it's me communicating, having a direct conversation with you. And so if you are not on my email list, DM me and let me know. But if you've joined our community and you gave us your email, you should be on my email list. I send about 3 emails a week. It's not spammy. They're all value add. What do you think of the emails that you've been getting from me, Anson?
Well, I mean, like you said, obviously they work. I think I got a notification of one of your, maybe 2 weeks ago, your podcast guest, and and then the ones that aren't podcast related, they offer value, and they, like you said, I don't feel like they're overly spammy. I try to.
They're not spammy at all. In fact, I could probably do more promotion than I do. Thanks for that.
Yeah.
So let's just dive right into it, Anson. I know you're excited to be here. I'm excited to have you. Tell me a little bit about who Anson Young was pre-real estate. Like, give us a little bit of your history.
That feels like it's forever ago. So, different lifetime. But no, so I, after a year of college, I decided that college wasn't really for me. I moved back to Denver with my then girlfriend, now wife, and she was working for a CPA firm. She'd been working there for a long time. And it was time for me just to figure out what I wanted to do. I got pretty lucky. A friend of my brother got me a job at an IT firm. And I was way out of my depth. I mean, I know computers well enough, but so I started off as a computer operator at night. After about 2 years, I switched over to like a day shift doing IT support. And from there, I was working on being a network administrator, for those of you in IT, back in the early 2000s, network administrator. And then I got laid off, like everybody did. I think in 2003, it was kind of the post .com bubble stuff. They merged twice, and then basically I was just redundant. There's literally 4 other people that they merged with that had my job, and so they're like, they let half of us go, and I didn't really enjoy that experience. That kind of taken out of your hands feels very unempowering. It's like I have no control here. And I watched my dad is in information technology as well. And he's survived like 17 rounds of layoffs in 30 years. And so for him, I watched him growing up every 2 years or 3 years, worrying about if the latest merger or acquisition or move would mean that he was out of a job. He thankfully survived all of that.
Yeah, but stressful.
Yeah, very stressful. Exactly.
Because someone else is in control. There's so much uncertainty.
Totally.
You don't have control over.
Yeah. And that's rough. And so, for a little bit right after that, I started bartending, which was probably it's like my second favorite job I've ever done, just because it's people, it's low stress for the most part.
I bartended through college too.
Yeah.
And
great.
I loved that job. I didn't do it very long, but I had so much fun. I loved it.
I know I could go back like anytime and just maybe when I retire, I'll just be like the old man bartender or something, like
just for fun, not because you have to do it.
Yes, totally. Absolutely. So I bartended for maybe a year and a half. And then my wife and I decided, since I wasn't like, I didn't have like an office job or anything like that. My brother, he and his wife just had their first kid down in Arizona. So we decided, hey, why not just be closer to our niece, which is, we have a pretty small family. So she's like our only niece. Why not be closer to them? And so we picked up and we moved, our lives down to Arizona. And in that process, right before I left, my friend Paul, thank you, Paul, handed me Rich Dad, Poor Dad. And he said, you have to read this book. So I have like the basic origin story in real estate of like,
you know what? You're not the first podcast guest that's come on and referenced that book or Think and Grow Rich or, or Michael Gerber's The E-Myth.
Okay. Yeah, that's a good one.
Yeah. So, but a lot of people who get the real estate bug or the entrepreneurial bug, they're the Rich Dad, Poor Dad generation.
Yeah. Oh yeah. I would put like 95% of the people I meet in this business have, started off with that book or, shortly after. But so I figured, new city, new opportunity, I could either double down on IT and continue, getting certifications and trying to find jobs, or I could try this unknown other thing that blew my mind. This, book kind of blew my mind. And so, when we landed in Phoenix, I took up a bartending job just to pay the bills, but I immediately just started everything that I could into real estate, just trying to figure out what the heck to do. And so that was my transition from the cubicle to, bartender at night and trying to figure out real estate during the day.
And so where did you start in real estate?
So, my first year felt like I was just fledgling and just trying to figure anything that I could out.
Did you do it on your own, or did you find any courses or programs or education? Did you find BiggerPockets? Did you sign up for Fortune Builders? Where did you, or did you flail around for a year and then start kind of realizing, there's a system to this?
No, that's a really good question. Probably the first 6 months I was just on my own. I was going to meetup groups, all the REIA,
right,
ASREIA, and all the other ones.
I just went to a REIA meeting last night.
Yeah. So I went to all the REIA meetings. I went to all the Cash Flow 101 games. If you're that old and you understand what that is.
Yeah.
So I went
Cash Flow Quadrant. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So I went and I tried to latch on to anybody that I could and just I was willing to do any kind of work for them in exchange for information of like, so I found a couple of investors and a couple of agents who were, we became decently friends through the process. I would go do kind of crappy jobs for them in exchange for knowledge. So I'd go door knock, I'd go dig, sign holes in the yard and post signs for the agents. I'd go deliver contracts. And in exchange, I learned how to, use MLS, what contracts were, a little bit of deal analysis, a little bit of negotiation, that kind of stuff. I did hire a coach, and this is not a great idea, but my coach was based in Chicago and I'm in Arizona. And it felt like it was just too far away of a relationship. Like I flew to Chicago, we did, some training, and it was just too much information. It was like 20 strategies on real estate. And I needed to just laser focus on one, in hindsight, of course. And, every question I'd ask him that was kind of Arizona specific, he just had no clue what was going on. Props to him for doing his best. But what really happened was my agent that I've been doing a lot of work for came to me one day and she's like, look, one of my clients is going to sell this property. It's kind of as is, and it's in a really good location on the west side. And I think that the opportunity is too good to pass up. And we kind of roughly crunched the numbers and decided to buy that property. And that was kind of that was after a year of, solid trying to get into the business. So it took a while.
So, I think that's a very common journey. Is you get the bug, you like, oh my God, I want to do it. And you see what's possible. You see the dream being a real estate investor. And then the honeymoon wears off and you realize, oh, this isn't like a get rich quick thing. This is a I got to hunker down and learn a whole new profession. Like there's a lot to this thing. And it
Absolutely.
can be a little overwhelming. And then you just suck up a lot of information and marinate in it for a while. And then you realize, oh, there is a path here. There is a very specific set of steps and skills that I need. You start to make sense of it, and then you take action. And so you sound really normal to me. So how did that, did you do a flip? Was that your, what did you do with that first opportunity?
Yeah. So at first I was trying, like I said, I had, this kind of 3-ring binder. I wish I still had it because I would look through it and kind of figure out if any of the information was actually good, but it had 20 strategies. And so I started to try to do a lease option, and then I tried to rent it for a while. And then I tried to just sell it as is for hire, because this is 2005 in Phoenix. And it was just, the market's red hot. People were just turning around and selling properties all the time. And finally, my wife was like, hey, we have this house that we're renting. And then we have this house that's empty, that's just sitting there. Why don't we move into it and just fix it up? And then we can figure it out from there. And so in her brilliant wisdom, and I just followed along, we moved in, did some fix up. It didn't need a lot, but it definitely needed some.
To that point, you guys were renting a house that you lived in.
Yep.
You bought this as a project, and then it became your residence, and you fixed it up while you were
there. So now, it's called a live-in flip. I mean, we lived there for a year. We fixed up things over time, and then sold. It was almost a full calendar year to the day later. We decided Phoenix and Arizona was not for us. My brother and his wife had moved and taken a job in Ohio. So for us, we were there by ourselves again. And we're like, we have no real reason to stay here. All of our family's in Colorado. We're going to move back to Colorado. So we sold that. And in that live-in flip process. What was that?
How'd you do on it?
We did great. We made $60,000 in profit, and basically, moved back to Denver with, a lot more knowledge and a nice chunk of change to kind of go on and do the next thing.
Good for you. And are you still in Denver area?
Yep.
Okay. Cool.
Yeah.
Nice. Okay. And then after that, how long was it for you to kind of get your mojo rolling in Denver?
That's a good question that I don't think a lot of people understand is when you move to a new market, it feels like starting over.
Oh, you are starting over.
Totally. Yeah.
There's no momentum. It's just like, oh,
totally.
Okay. I'm starting from scratch again.
Yeah. Now I have to understand this market and what's going on here. It probably took me longer than it should, but it took me about a year to really get kind of my feet under me and figure out what's going on here. And of course, this was like right at the turn of, I think that the subprime mortgage stuff started in the Sunbelt states in like 2006. Didn't really hit Denver till 2007, 2008. And so in this time, there's all this rumblings about bank crashes and housing crashes. And, it's just the bleeding edge of that cliff. And so I was just really trying to figure out what was going on and what kind of the smart play would be here. And in the meantime, I started working for an agent. And in hindsight, it was such a good move for me, but he had me started doing just BPOs for him. So broker price opinions. This is what banks give out to agents in order to value foreclosure properties or bank-owned properties. And so I was doing like, 10 to 30 of these things a week. And I didn't enjoy it in that time, but in hindsight, it really taught me a lot about valuation.
Yeah.
Now I can just look at pictures and the comps and have a really good idea of what a house is worth. And if I didn't put in those reps, over and over and over.
Absolutely. So that right there, you have to practice it to master it. And there's several skills. So you got evaluation and comping really down by doing that, even though you didn't love it. But there's this grind aspect to the business that the big coaching and education companies don't tell you. They sell you the dream, but they don't sell you the hard work that makes that dream happen. And it's doing that kind of grunt work.
Yeah, it's so true. And I would never have
Yeah.
believed it at the time. I just would have been like, I don't enjoy doing this, but I have to make some money, and I want to be in the real estate business, and so I'm going to do whatever I can to
Yeah, and
be in
it's
front of that.
delayed gratification, which so many human beings are not good at, and that you didn't realize the value of it until after the fact.
It's so true. Yeah.
It's hard to grind when especially in the beginning, when you're in that conscious incompetence stage of learning something. It is so hard to stick with something because it's more work and little reward until you move over to that conscious competence stage where you're starting to get a little momentum. You're starting to get rewarded for your efforts. And then eventually you get to mastery, where it's like, it's easy and you can do it and there's just momentum, all kinds of momentum. So
yeah,
so good awareness. So working for an agent, doing a little bit of grunt work there, developing skills. Also, as a fairly new investor, I think you were wise. And how is it that you just knew, being so inexperienced, what was coming? Was it through researching your market? What was it that helped you go, shit's about to happen and I'm going to be smart about it? So talk about that, because I had a lot of investor friends just lose their entire portfolios.
Yeah.
In that 2007, 8, 9, they're calling it the deep recession.
Yeah, no, and it was brutal at the time. It's, it felt like there was no end to it at some point. It just was like the sky just keeps falling. And I would love to say that I was extremely analytical or smart about it. Honestly, it was probably mostly dumb luck. I got into
I appreciate your humility.
Yeah, I mean, I wish I was like, no, I'm a strategical genius and I, figured it all out. No, I was like 25 and dumb. So, at the time, I got my license, and parted ways with that other agent. I started kind of working on my own, figuring like, hey, I just worked for an agent that did, he did, I don't know, 30, 40, 50 deals a year, saw his lifestyle, thought this could be a good way to go in real estate. I'll just get my license and do agent stuff. I did that for about a year before I got pretty burned out on 10 showings on a Saturday, every Saturday for a year kind of stuff. I closed a good amount of deals, was fairly happy with it, but I always knew I wanted to get back in the investment side. And so what I did was I kind of saw some of the writing on the wall of, okay, there's a bunch of bank-owned foreclosures. How can I maybe ride that train, or at least figure out that? Because that seemed like a good way to get back into investing, was bank-owned foreclosures. So I joined a bank-owned foreclosure team where they were doing 300 to 400 REOs sales per year. So extremely busy. We had like a closing a day for like 3 years.
Really?
And these were the guys that were selling the assets for the banks. And so I got to really know, how the bank-owned foreclosure process works internally. And then I took that knowledge and started buying bank-owned foreclosures kind of on my free time. Since I was licensed, I had the freedom to buy my own properties through the team and stuff. I was able to buy other REOs, not our own inventory, just for those of you who know. If you know, that's a no-no. But I was buying other, agents' properties that they were listing. And, over the course of the next couple of years, I was basically wholesaling those deals to other investors, wholesaling those deals to hedge funds. We started working in Arizona, and full circle, like we got our licenses in Arizona. We started selling REO in Arizona, and I was wholesaling REO properties from Denver. Yeah, exactly. Because we had all the pieces. Like it was another one of those like skill building things that I look back on now and I go, we were selling properties that we would never see at all. I mean, we sold hundreds in Arizona that we never saw, but we relied on the really good people on the ground, our property preservation team and, other people who were there on the ground in order to give us the eyes and ears in order to do our jobs. Now, when it comes to investing, I can invest, in Ohio and Nebraska and stuff and not ever have to see those properties.
Now, during all that, where you were doing a lot of wholesaling, just selling those off to other investors, did you start to accumulate a portfolio of your own, or were you still gun shy about that given the climate?
Yeah, very gun shy about it.
Yeah.
Like total hindsight, I wish I kept every single thing I touched, especially at the time. Looking at the valuation now of stuff that I wholesaled back in 2009, it's worth 3 times more than what I was paying for.
Yeah, because that was the opportunity back
it was totally
it was foreclosures because of the subprime and the predatory lending practices.
Yep.
I mean, that we will probably never have another foreclosure, tidal wave of opportunity like we
I
did.
agree.
Yeah.
I totally agree with that. Yeah, it was very unique situations. Anybody who's trying to liken right now to 2008,
there's no way. I don't care what anybody says. The conditions are different, and we're never going to go there again.
Totally.
What it was, something out of integrity in the way lending practices were done. And then, if you remember, after that, it was almost impossible to get loans. They got really strict, and then COVID hit, and there were a little bit more of the tightening of the reins, but everything course corrected. Here, everyone was worried about COVID. COVID was actually phenomenal for real estate. It like the middle of 2020, where things started to course correct a little bit, but we're never going to go there. The economy is going to change, and things are going to happen for different reasons. But people aren't going to lose whole portfolios, especially if they're in a market like I'm in, where even with the market changing the way it is, there's still a housing shortage. It doesn't matter whether there's a recession or things going on. People still need houses to live in. Yep. So, it might change the value, the ARV, the amount of rent you can get, but there'll be other factors. It'll be a different kind of recession.
Yeah, I totally agree with that.
Yeah, different factors. And I'm not a super analytical with the market research person. This is just common sense. If you're alive, awake, and paying attention to what's going on in the world, you can kind of assume all that.
Yeah.
So when did you start to feel safe to start to accumulate a portfolio? Did you start to shift into, when did you wake up to, I'm still doing a JOB here and I'm still trading time for dollars? Because a lot of investors forget that they're in the rehabbing and wholesaling, but it's just like you just traded one job for another. When did you start to shift into a more passive income strategy mindset?
Yeah, Raina, it took me way too long, honestly. I had people telling me, well, everybody's telling me a lot of different things, but even friends of mine in 2013 that were like, you need to just start buying some of these for yourself and then building up from there. I honestly didn't start until 2020, like the end of 2020.
And how long had you been in the business before that?
Well, I mean, technically since 2005. Yeah.
2005. It took you 15 years.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. I've been, you get addicted to transactional income. You're like, especially at the time, there was a mantra.
Being an investor and an agent.
Yeah. And there was a time where people are like, hey, I am totally fine with $100 a door, for their profit on a rental. And
I'm
I
not
would,
okay with
yeah.
that. That's
But I
for
mean,
me.
if you look back at
Yeah,
2014 or
right.
15, people are like $100, $200 a door. This is totally fine.
In some markets that is what you're going to get. That's
Totally.
just not not for me, not in my market, not what
Yep.
I want.
And same, like I'm in a pretty high cost of living market. So I looked at that and I go, well, I can make, $80,000 now or $100 a door. Um, like this is a pretty easy decision. I'm going to go with option A. Um,
Right.
and so, yeah, I mean, wholesaling, flipping, doing all of that for a long time. Um, and then, 2020 hit. I had already started planning on doing some out of state investing. Um, very, very sexy term, at the time, still is, but, you know, and, the grass is greener over there.
Right.
And, so I started putting together a plan, analyzing a bunch of markets. COVID hit, and I put that plan on hold for a little bit because it again felt like the sky is falling. Nobody knew how this was going to shake out. And then after like month 1 or 2, when inventory was still really low, sales are still happening. I'm not too worried about it at that point. It took me about 6 months to kind of enact a plan, but right at the start of 2021, we started basically marketing and testing out markets to see if we can buy in those markets and if the numbers made sense and everything like that. So it took me 15 years in order to start holding properties. So
And so
oh,
talk about the last 2 to 3 years, COVID,
yep,
what your strategy's been. How did you leverage the opportunities
yep.
COVID brought, and what's your focus in your business now?
Yeah, so I mean I think that the biggest opportunity during COVID was a lot of the competition backed off. So a lot
Especially
of,
in 2020. They
yes,
could
for sure.
back into the game in 2021, but in
Yeah,
2020, people were so worried that it was going to go in the opposite direction than it went.
right.
So yeah, it was a great year for opportunity.
Yeah, and I think the other opportunity there was if you took advantage of low interest rates, historically low interest rates at the time.
Yeah, I will never be refinancing my home
Yeah,
percent interest. And I had bought it at 3.75%, and I started getting inundated with all those lender, refi letters. And I'm just like, I'm at 3.75. I'm not going to refinance 6 months after I bought. And they just kept coming, and I got curious. And so I did refinance. And I'll tell you, the day I refinanced for a nanosecond, it hit 1.75.
wow.
And it was there for like a week, I think.
Yep.
It's like, oh, but 2.5 isn't bad.
2.5 is not bad at all.
Yeah.
Yeah, we'll never see that again.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I pay less in mortgage than a lot of people are paying for rent in the
Yep.
same.
Yep.
And that is the issue in a lot of markets like yours and mine. You're in Denver. I'm in Asheville, North Carolina, where you have a growing economy. Cost of living is rising, and higher is great for landlords, shitty for renters, because if they don't have that 20% down and they don't have the income level to support it, especially with interest rates where they're at,
Yep.
I mean, I would, but let's just say I like where I was at 4 years ago, the income level I had then, as opposed to what I have now. It's like, I wouldn't have qualified to buy my house today back then at the current interest rates. The interest rates would have priced me out of the house.
Yeah, which is crazy, right? So,
Yeah.
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 Yeah. And to answer your second question, like what's the business like today? We're mainly focused out of state. So we're in 4 markets out of state. And
It's are you in? Because this is going to get shared in over 100 groups, and we're constantly growing. There's several hundred real estate investment groups on Facebook.
oh yeah, of course. Yeah.
And so we keep joining them and to just expand our reach. But after we're live, we're going to share this in over 100 groups. And you talking about the markets you're in, people can comment. And if anybody wants to work with Anson in any of these markets that he's in, that he's about to share, comment, but tag him in your comments so that he gets it. Because if you don't tag him, he's not going to be trolling through every Facebook group we post this in to
That's
see
right.
what people are saying. You've got to tag him. So what markets are you in, Anson?
So we're in Lincoln and Omaha, Nebraska. We're in Cincinnati and Columbus, Ohio, and we just started marketing in Indianapolis, so just next door to Ohio. So those are our markets.
Okay. Are you doing any business in Denver?
I mean, I'm doing retail agent business.
Okay.
I'll wholesale something if it's interesting and comes across my desk, but I
But it's
really,
not your focus, right?
yeah, I kind of switched gears and went from the transactional income piece. Now I'm 100% chasing, cash flow at this point.
So where's your part? And, talk about the burr.
Yeah. Um, so with doing off market deal acquisitions, we're able to most of the time get good deals that are great candidates for burr properties. We are purchasing these with either private money or hard money, and a little bit of bank money in one of our markets. But obviously doing the burr method, so we're buying, we're renovating, and then we're refinancing, and we're refinancing most of the time into a DSCR loan. Sometimes it's a bank portfolio loan. It just depends on kind of what market and what's kind of best for that. We don't have just one template, which is kind of nice. We can work with different banks and different lenders on that, but DSCR is just like an infinite lending machine, as long as you have decent
And for the newer investors, tell them yes.
debt service. It's a debt service loan, and so instead of looking at you and your income, they obviously want to know if you have decent credit. Like there's some things that you can't have on your credit
that you're not a schmuck, but it's really based on the property.
Right. It's based on an income ratio. And so, if you are trying to do a cash out DSCR, there's a certain ratio that they want to look for. And obviously a certain percentage of that appraisal that you can cash out to, and then the rest is just left in there as equity. So if you're putting $20,000 down on your hard money loan, and then that includes your your rehab funds, and then you go to refinance and you want your 20,000 back out, you need to make sure that there's enough room in that deal so that you can get that money back out. Because that's the entire point of the burr, is to recoup those funds in order to use on the next property. And so yeah, they really want to look at that. What's the income on the property versus the amount that the amount that we're lending, and they base it on that ratio. So if it's a 1% or sometimes less than that, they're totally fine with it. If it's over 1%, it's pretty easy for them to say yes. And they want to make sure that you have like 6 months of reserves, but there's no limit to the amount of these loans that you could get. So theoretically, if you had enough down payments, or if you recycled enough burr money, you could have 1,000 of these.
To the legal limit of 10 mortgages.
Right. Yeah. It gets around that. And yeah, it's very interesting. If you haven't talked to any DSCR lenders, most lenders can do DSCR. They just may not be versed in it. If you find a really good DSCR lender that walks you through the whole process, you'll be kind of blown away as to the power of that instrument. So it's like a non-qualified loan. So it falls under a whole different branch of, you can have way more than 10. You could have like 1 million of them if you had if you had that amount of property and down payments or burr money recycled. So it's pretty crazy.
Ask you, I'm just getting a spontaneous idea here, because I agree with you. There's a lot of opportunity there, and there's so many lending vehicles. I mean, it's interesting when people say that it's hard to find money. I think, no, it's not. All you have to do is start having conversations with people, especially now. People are worried about borrowing money because of high interest rates. There are lenders just begging to give people money right now.
Yeah.
And,
Yeah.
and, you don't have to let high interest rates stop you because you can always refinance later.
Yep.
And then what's interesting, what I'm seeing a little bit of a trend is, in order to be competitive with higher interest rates, a lot of like private money and hard money lenders are lowering their rates. And it's like, that's strange. Your rates should be going up also, right? Which is great for us that are borrowing money, a lender who used to lend at 10 and 12% that's lending between 8 and 9. It's like, sure, I'll take your 8 to 9 over 10.
Yeah. And that used to be brutal when interest rates were like 3 or 4. And you're like, I'm paying 10%. Oh, this sucks. But now it's like the difference between 8 and 10 is not that much.
Yeah. So tell me tell me about your portfolio in the last 2.5, 3 years. How have you done with focusing the majority of your time and effort on building a passive income portfolio?
Yeah. So, my plan was to kind of go into each market in phases to, test out, make sure that we can, if our marketing is getting good response, if we can negotiate and buy properties where we need to buy them at. So for probably the first in each market, probably the first 6 to 8 months, we were really just kind of honing in and testing and making sure that our systems were good in that market. So we were honestly, in any property that we would get under contract, we're just wholesaling out. Sometimes we would wholesale them, just list them right back on list them on MLS and call it good. But it was definitely like a non-committal dating strategy for the market before we, get hitched, so to speak, and start like putting roots down and owning a bunch of properties in that market. It's so, for every, and so now for about every, 4 or 5 deals, we're keeping one, and we're really financing the rest of the operation with those other 4 that we're either wholesaling, we're flipping, or we're wholetailing. And,
so the active investing's feeding the passive. So
yeah. And it's byproduct. Excuse me. It's byproduct of, like, if you have a good lead generation system, you're just going to have more leads than you can take down or know what to do with. And sometimes they're just out of your wheelhouse. So if your buy box for BRRRRs is, this, and the property is just outside of that, but it's still a good deal for someone else, that's where we can, wholesale it or put it back on the market and feed the inventory of the market and let that dictate what it sells for. So and even retail leads, we have ways to, dispose of those. Since I'm licensed and I'm with a brokerage where I can have teams in other states and not be licensed in those states, means I can hire an agent directly in my team network and feed them retail leads. Yeah, I am.
Yeah, so that's why I was wondering. I mean, you could have been with one of the other brokers that are nationwide, but EXP makes that strategy a lot easier to.
And I did switch over to them in 2020 for that reason. Looking at my options I've been with 7 brokerages in my career, and looking at my options on doing things out of state, that was definitely by far the best choice. So if anybody's looking to do out of state investing and they're licensed in their own state and they're trying to figure out how to make some of that work, at least hit me up. I'm not going to try to convert you to anything, but at least I have experience there.
Yeah, you can put out-of-state agents that are under another recruit them into EXP and put them under you, and you don't have to have that state license, but you're still getting like an override commission on all their production.
Yeah, and the other piece is that you only have one cap. So if I'm in, if I have teams in 10 states, I don't have to pay 10 caps. I only pay one cap. And that's huge. That's way different than our days back in Keller Williams and stuff. When we were selling REOs in 4 markets, we had to pay 4 caps to 4 different offices. That's like 80 grand right there. So that gets very expensive.
Yeah, it really
Um,
eats into any benefits, any pay,
yeah.
commissions that are making. Yeah.
Exactly. So the portfolio right now, we're buying roughly about 4 per month per market, and we're keeping about 1 or 2 of those per market. So we're up to 33 and growing.
Not
And
bad for 2 years.
not too bad. It would be nice to be to the point where we're doing about 10 per month that we're keeping. And then
That's your
after
goal.
like 2 years, really just, maybe just feed, keep the wholesaling machine going. And at that point, I'm not trying to make more money than God or, be,
Yeah. Do you
a
have
billionaire.
or an exit strategy where you just say, I'm not working anymore? Is there a goal? Is there a goal date or a goal
Yeah.
income level where you just say, I don't need to be an agent or an
Yeah.
active investor anymore? Or are you having so much fun doing that work that you keep going? What's the honest answer to that?
Yeah. I wish it was fun every day. That's for sure. It's not always fun. But probably after about 100 properties, we'll probably really reevaluate, my active time in that business. And I could easily probably just hire a business manager to kind of handle some of that stuff. And then just be able to, since we already have lead generation machine going, if it makes sense to keep that going and still wholesale or flip in those markets, we can do that.
But you just have your work, you're out of it though.
Yeah.
You're going to automate and delegate and
Yeah.
you keep the money machine going. You just don't have to be in the business anymore.
Yeah. And I think that my kind of passion project after that would probably just be, doing some ground up development here in Denver. Maybe like 4 projects a year sounds low stress. And I really enjoy that process. There's a lot of really cool new technologies in the new build world of cool things that you can do.
Modulars, prefabs, containers, tiny house.
Yeah.
Yeah. There's
Yeah.
a lot of fun stuff.
Yeah.
going.
Prefab along those lines is mass
Yeah.
timber is actually a really cool movement that I've been getting into a bit more.
What's
And
it called?
it's called mass timber. So
Mass timber.
it's a lot like prefab.
Okay.
And and you can build all out of wood. You can build up to like 8 stories with mass timber. It's actually a really, really, really cool thing. Sustainable, like the Forest Service is giving out grants. Like there's all kinds of like cool opportunities in that space. And so that would probably keep me busy.
Wow,
And
this
happy.
is cool. Yeah. I've been doing a lot of, like, it's been percolating in my head for years about restructuring or creating a different kind of community for retirement rather than people ending up in very expensive retirement communities. If they're wealthy enough, great, more power to you. But other people who end up having medical needs and end up in assisted living, really sterile kind of clinical environments, or in some state-run thing.
Right.
That's been my biggest fear. It's like, okay, I don't want to end up like a little old bag lady in some state facility where no one cares and no one's coming, And so this idea had been percolating for years about, wow, what if, we were to not communes, but intentional community, and take that idea, but modify it a little bit and make it more intimate. Micro communities of where you build your own retirement community in your own backyard, and you add units, and now you've got a home that's actually generating income for you, and you have a community around you of people that care, and you don't have to end up in an assisted living home. I know that's a very simplified version, but what that passion project for me did is it sucked me down this rabbit hole of researching the tiny house movement, all the builders, which then you can't without researching tiny houses, eventually you're going to cross paths with rehabs and prefabs and modulars and container homes and sustainable building and all the different boxable and all those different new ways of how do we build more affordable housing faster and cheaper and better. I mean, like modulars and prefabs, they're like some of the most sustainable, strong earthquake, fire, mildew, flood, water, resistant kind of structures. So
Yeah.
you just got me out. You triggered something because, so now I've got to go down this mass timber little rabbit, because all of that stuff fascinates me.
Yeah. I went to a conference in Denver.
Yeah.
In February, and that it was a mass timber conference, but the focus, like a lot of the focus, is on affordable housing, workforce housing, the opportunities and the grants that are given because it is a sustainable thing. It was like, oh, you can solve multiple problems here with, obviously, affordable housing is a huge issue in high cost of living markets. And, how can you kind of knock out two birds with one stone with doing the most good to a community, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Because like when my research started, it was all about tiny homes. Well, as I've done more research, I'm like, well, maybe not so much, because many years ago when that movement started, and it's been underway for a long time. I mean, a lot of people think it's a new idea. It's not. There's over 100 tiny house builders, and they're all busy around the United States. And now with COVID and the cost of supplies and inflation, a tiny house used to be, on average, you could build one for $50,000 or $60,000.
I remember.
It's double that now for just pretty mid-range. And my research was, how do I find something where the cost is lower, so that in order to develop I was thinking developing small rental communities where on one property we're creating several doors, and how do you make that cost effective? Well, tiny houses aren't the most cost effective and the most sustainable and the easiest to fund.
Right.
Modulars are.
Yeah. Prefab is
version
crazy.
Of modular, prefab, and now I've got to look into mass timber, But it's not just about that building or how you're building. It's like you said, you've got to go to conferences. You've got to you've got to find out what are the regulatory organizations that are forming, that are fighting for the zoning laws and the rules and stuff to change, to accommodate all these different ways of building, all these different ways of building more affordable housing. There was a project we were under contract and we ended up pulling out because we couldn't get it to work, because a hard money lender, we couldn't get appraisals. No appraisers would go out because it was in a transitional area that the city wanted it. We were buying a half an acre lot, an RM8 zone. And every time we kept improving our model, we were able to add more units. And where we got to is container homes, and doing 2-bedroom, 1-bath container home and stacking another one on top. But even though the state of North Carolina and Asheville have signed off on container homes, if you fund that with private and hard money, if you can even get hard money lenders to sign off on it. So then you're like, okay, well, we got to do the whole project with private money, but you're still going to have to refinance out of the private money loan, even if it is a 5-year loan or something like that. And the issue is, even though they're legal in our state, the banks are still conservative. So you eventually have to get that conventional lending, and it's hard to do. So so I love hearing about these movements where it's not just about how the resources and how something's being built, but how can you also fund it, and is it being supported with zoning and laws, and is it, is it going to easily integrate with mainstream,
Yeah. Yeah, I'd love to see that come to fruition somehow, like be a
Yeah.
pioneer in the container home in Asheville.
Yeah.
That would be awesome.
Yeah. Well, you could self-fund and then it's not an
True.
issue. The
True.
funding that is the issue.
Yeah.
So then you think, okay, just have a really rocking wholesale business and
Yeah.
fund it with your wholesale, you know.
Or
So,
do a capital raise and get
yeah.
people on board with the concept, and then maybe DSCR would look at it after that. I don't know if it's if it's stable, I guess.
Yeah. We should talk.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, so anything we haven't covered that you wanted to share about your journey, where you're at, your experience, words of wisdom?
I mean, I think we covered like a huge swath of my experience, which which has changed over the years. But yeah, nothing I can think of off the top of my head. I mean,
okay. Well, then here's where we transition into, what's your rooftop message? If you were to hop up on a rooftop and have a captive audience, and you could share words of wisdom that could make a difference for them, what's the advice you want to give people if they were to hear it and heed it?
Yeah. A few things, I guess, if it's right off the top of my head, it's this business isn't easy, but it's definitely, worth it. And you have to definitely surround yourself with people who get it. If it's not your personal, not everybody has a great, group of friends or personal life where they can have, kick-ass real estate friends or whatever. But, in your community, there are people through meetups and through BiggerPockets and through Facebook groups just like this, that you can connect with the right people and really help each other sharpen, your mindset, staying around those people. When I first discovered that, Facebook has thousands and thousands and thousands of investors who are, all trying to do the same thing. They're trying to make their lives better. They're trying to make their communities better. They're trying to make some money. They're trying to, whatever they're trying to do, we're in alignment and getting, even if it's just messaging people out of the blue that you see that are, have a good track record of messages in the group that you're in. You're like, hey, I want to get to know that person a little bit more. Just reaching out to people via Messenger is how I got it started doing kind of a nationwide network. And now I have, real estate friends in, all 50 states. And over time, you really get to know what they're doing. These are people who they're not your direct competition. So you can have really open and candid conversations with them, where sometimes when you're local, it doesn't feel like you can do that. Some people are very guarded about their, think that you're going to go steal all their business or something. But if I'm talking to a guy in Portland who has no interest in Denver, and I'm in Denver and I have no interest in Portland, we're going to have the best conversation ever
for each other, right?
Yeah, about every single thing that we're doing inside of our business. And so, being able to get out, reach out, and network is going to change your entire career for sure. And that second piece would be, I had an old mentor that said, like, you're either consistent or you're non-existent. And so, whether it's keeping up inside, whether it's, keeping up inside the groups that you're in, keeping up with friends, keeping up network with people in your network, agents, lenders, whoever those people are, whether it's marketing, if you're marketing, you're either, consistent with your marketing or you don't even exist. I think it's just really good words of wisdom as you go through your whole career in real estate. If you're not getting enough deals, you're not being consistent enough with your marketing. If you're not getting good enough lending, you're not being consistent with your networking and expanding your network. And so those would be my two pieces of advice on my rooftop.
I love it. Yeah. Strategic networking.
Yeah, for
building
sure.
relationships, investing in relationships.
Yep. Investment. That's a good word. Absolutely.
Be a go-giver, as Pace Morby would say, is give more than you take. Build a good reputation, build goodwill, and just build a network of relationships of people that you can tap into as resources. So
Absolutely.
this was just such a joy, Anson. I'm so glad you're in my community. I'm so glad you took me up on the offer to do this. In fact, Anson and I did not know each other before this interview. A lot
That's
of
true.
the people I've invited, I've known. And so if you are someone who is thriving as a real estate investor, you're not a beginner, you're not struggling, you figured it out, you can support yourself easily in your real estate investment business, and you've got words of wisdom to share, please reach out to me, tag me in this post if you're seeing it in a group other than mine, or send me a DM. I would love to have you as a guest on my podcast and have you share your experience. Everyone's unique. Your journey has been very unique. And I think you've shared a lot that is going to inspire other people. So that's what this podcast is for. Thank you so much, Anson, for joining me, for being so open and generous with sharing your experience with us. And I hope you and I get a chance to, connect and develop a relationship from here.
Absolutely.
And yeah, good luck in building up your portfolio this year. I hope, what's your goal by the end of the year? Where would you like your rental portfolio to be at?
That's a good question. I think around 50 units would probably be the end of the year goal.
Yeah, that's doable considering what you've accomplished so far. Yeah.
Hope so.
All right. So it's only 18 more units.
That's right. Yeah, that is true. That is true.
So you just have to do 1.5 more unit, 1.5 acquisitions each month instead of just one.
Should be easy. Yeah.
Yeah. There you go. Well, no, if we're in May, June, July, August, September, October, November, December, 7 months, 18 units. So you're looking at about 2.5 a month.
Yeah.
Go get them.
Go get them. That's right.
Go get them, Tiger. All right. Thanks. Take care. Enjoy the rest of your week, everyone. Go out there, take action. No excuses, just results. Bye now.
Bye. Thank you.
You're welcome.